The first book that I read when I came to this country was A Freedom Rider's Diary by Erin Gruwell and her students of Long Beach, California. I automatically saw that there are two Americas. One was the America that I saw depicted on television growing up in Sierra Leone. And the other was the reality that I learned from Erin's students. The reality to face every Black boy and man in this country. The reality of Trayvon Martin. The reality of Mike Brown in Ferguson. I was so inspired by Erin that I wanted to meet her. Here's someone that has dedicated her life to helping not only children in room 203 at Wilson High, but to kids like myself, who now believe that there are indeed amazing teachers in the world. It is with great honor that I introduce to you Erin Gruwell, my personal hero, in honor of her work to speak out when no one did, believed when no one believed, and to give voice to people who had no voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Erin Gruwell.
Although my title is teacher, I stand beside you and in front of you as a student. I am awestruck by the art and the music and the activism and the courage of everyone who has stood on the stage before me. You see, I am an ordinary person who has extraordinary experiences. When students and teachers every day walk into my classroom and they've learned how to put down their fist, put down their gun, and pick up a pen. My students walked into my classroom years ago, September 6, 1994, 20 years ago, and they were jaded, just like Muhammad. They'd seen things that no kid should see, experienced things no kid should experience, and they'd given up. At the age of 14, they thought they were doomed to drop out of school at 14, be behind bars at the age of 15, and 6 feet under by the time they were 18. And the idea of this woman standing before them with polka dots and pearls and this perceived right privilege did not resonate with my students. They looked me up and down and thought, who is this crazy cheerleader from hell? And what do these sonnets and these stories have to do with my life about survival? They thought there's no way that this crazy woman understands what it feels like in the pit of a stomach to be hungry or to be scared or to be angry. And I looked at my students who were miserable, and their sole purpose was to make me as miserable as they were. And they did a really good job. As my syllabus came back at me in the form of a paper airplane with a question, why do we have to read books written by dead white guys in tights? Which is a very profound question. The idea that I dared to dream that my students could immortalize their story, that they could leave a legacy, just like that little girl in that tiny little attic, or that young boy, Elie Wiesel, who rode into Auschwitz-Birkenau in a cattle car, or that courageous young woman in the streets of Sarajevo, Zlata Filipovic. Imagine, I told my students, imagine if you can write that obituary you've never read. Imagine if you could give a voice to the voiceless. Imagine if there is hope for each and every one of you that is hopeless. So I wanted my students to pick up a pen and to write. And maybe, just maybe, we could send it off like a message in a bottle and someone would listen to those cries for help. But we did just that. We wrote and we wrote. And we sent off our manuscript. And in that classroom, we called it the little book that could, in honor of that train going down the tracks, saying, I think I can, I think I can. We sent our book to every single publishing house in our country. And every single one of them rejected us. And so we tried again. We tried again, and my students began to hone their craft, to edit, to write, to rewrite. And we sent it off one more time to just one house. So I suppose it's as it should be, that the only house that decided to take a chance on a teacher and 150 kids was the same publishing house that published a book written by a little girl in a tiny little attic. A little girl that picked up her pen, picked up her diary, and gave a voice to the voiceless, who had the courage to say that in spite of everything, I truly believe that people are good at heart. Muhammad gives each and every one of us that belief that people are good at heart. And just because people do bad things, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. So when that 3.5-year-old boy watched the most horrendous thing, man's inhumanity, and yet he lived to tell, and yet he was able to bear witness, and yet stand in front of each and every one of us rocking that tuxedo tonight. I sat in the audience and felt like a student. I wanted to raise my hand. I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to take notes. I wanted to take a mental picture. Because even though I don't know his parents, I felt like a mom tonight. I felt like my heart was gonna leap out of the chest. I was so proud. Because for each and every one of us who have that title of teacher, that's all we want. We don't care about those grades after you're gone. It's the lessons. And when you can teach one to teach another, that's the best part of critical thinking. So like I said, I stepped on this stage as an educator, but I am humbled to be Muhammad's student. I'm also humbled that Muhammad is now part of our Freedom Writer family. Freedom Writers have gone on to teach teachers. There are several of them in the audience tonight. And Muhammad is now a proud Freedom Writer teacher. And just like my original students who stood on a line and said so much by not saying anything at all, by playing a silly game called the line game, I got to watch Muhammad stand on that line and say so much. And just like my students who picked up a plastic champagne glass filled with sparkling apple cider, I got to see Muhammad pick up that glass filled with sparkling apple cider and to make a toast. And as each and every one of those teachers left our wake and thought, I'm gonna go teach one to teach another, I am so proud that each and every destination that takes you, Muhammad, to classrooms, to auditoriums, to stages, to bars, to restaurants, to Facebook, you are gonna continue to teach one to teach another. I would have never thought that this little book that could was the first book that you would ever read when you came to America. Makes me so proud. Because I remember my students saying, do you think anyone is ever going to read this? We thought maybe we will. Maybe we'll be in cahoots with our parents. We never knew that you would. And so thank you for paying it forward. And until my dying breath, I'm going to continue to tell your story, to learn from you, and to honor your legacy. So thank you.
Very good.